What's up, everybody? It's me, Joey P, Joe Pizzapia, back with another video here at Fantasy Pros. And you know, it just occurred to me, this is the only time of year where I can actually have my druthers. And what the hell does that mean anyway? My druthers. No one ever says, hey, how are you, Bill? I'm doing well, actually. Thanks for asking, Chris. I've got all my druthers. But here on this video, I'm going to get all my druthers right here, right now, with all the players that I want, my must-have players for 2022. Now, before we get into who those players are, I want to make sure you like this video and subscribe to our Fantasy Pros channel on YouTube and click that little bell for notifications so you know every single time an amazing video or podcast or fun thing drops here at Fantasy Pros, because we are here for you, getting ready to help you dominate all your fantasy football leagues this year. So without further ado, here are my druthers, I mean my 10 must-have players for 2022. Number 10, LAZARD, wide receiver, Green Bay Packers, wide receiver 45. Sometimes the simple answer is the right answer. LAZARD is the last man standing in an offensive wide receiver core that has lost out on DAVANTE Adams and MVS2 year over year. And sure, they drafted Christian Watson, but he's just a rookie, and Aaron Rodgers doesn't have time to sit there and play teacher to Christian Watson. He needs to win now. He wants to win now. And LAZARD has been there for this quarterback in the past. In fact, go back and look at the games where DAVANTE Adams was not around. LAZARD did pretty well. This is a guy that has the eye of Aaron Rodgers and has the opportunity as well in the red zone to make up some of that deficit that they lost year over year, losing DAVANTE Adams to the Las Vegas Raiders. So LAZARD is coming at a value. He's one of my must-have guys because I know the volume is going to be there. I know the quarterback play is going to be well above board, and that LAZARD has a really good chance to return his fantasy investment. Number 9, Javonte Williams, Denver Broncos running back, RB13. Now, Javonte Williams last year finished as RB17 while in a 50-50 split with Melvin Gordon. And yes, Melvin Gordon is returning, but you know who's not? Drew Lock. You know who else isn't? Vic Fangio. This is a new quarterback with Russell Wilson, a new head coach in Nathaniel Hackett, a new offensive system that I think is going to lead to a lot more scoring for the Denver Broncos and for the running backs as well. That means good things for Javonte Williams, even in a split again with Melvin Gordon. However, Javonte Williams is my must-have running back, especially in this backfield, because he is the younger, more explosive back. We've seen this time and time again, where veteran running backs have a good season, then we put too much faith in them, and the next thing you know, the fall-off begins. Now, I think this is going to be more of a 60-40 split for Javonte Williams, and in the 60-40 split in this new revamped offense, I think there's a chance for Javonte Williams to finish absolutely as an RB1. He's being drafted right outside of that. Heck, I think there's even top 10 upside here for him. He's one of my must-have guys because I am betting on the younger back. Speaking of younger backs, let's talk about number 8, A.J. Dillon, running back, Green Bay Packers, RB25. If you paid attention last year, you saw that A.J. Dillon was the fresher back down the stretch for the Packers. He was the guy getting the goal line work. He was also the guy getting receptions, much to my surprise, and he looked like he could handle a full workload. This is not a knock on Aaron Jones. He's a wonderful running back who has had a fantastic 3-year stretch. But you could see signs of Aaron Jones starting to break down, and typically a 3-year window of a full workload does that to most running backs in the NFL, and he's been in the league a little bit longer than you realize. A.J. Dillon is bigger, stronger, and at this point, I think the better bet and certainly the better investment. You've still got to pay almost a top 12 pick for Aaron Jones. A.J. Dillon is twice as cheap. I want him. He's a must-have guy for me, and I think there's a world where he actually outscores Aaron Jones potentially this year if Aaron Jones especially misses time again like he did in 2021. Number 7, Jaylen Waddle, wide receiver, Miami Dolphins, wide receiver 15. While everyone's trying to figure out, can Tyreek Hill be good without Patrick Mahomes? Will he? Won't he? I'll just take Jaylen Waddle instead. He is a must-have guy for me. Jaylen Waddle was a target monster last year, and I know what you're going to say. Joe, there was no Tyreek Hill around. Yes, that's fine. Tyreek Hill is around, but at the same time, I don't think it changes at the core of the kind of quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is. He is not the big-time, throw-the-ball deep kind of QB that Patrick Mahomes was that can really utilize the full skill set of Tyreek Hill. He's a guy that's looking more in the middle of the field, trying to move the chains, and Jaylen Waddle really fits that bill very well. Not to mention, he's got the confidence of Tua Tagovailoa already in his pocket, along with all those targets from last year. Sure, some of them are going to go to Tyreek Hill, but I think there's enough around for him to repeat again in a 100-catch season, and in full PPR, man, that is a must-have guy. I want Jaylen Waddle. I think he's being undervalued, and he's a must-have wide receiver for me this year. He was on a ton of championship teams for me last year. I bought in as a rookie. I'm buying in the sophomore season as well. Number 6, Dalton Schultz, tight end, Dallas Cowboys, tight end number 6. Now, last year, Dalton Schultz had a breakout season, but I think there's an elite level season in Dalton Schultz potentially in 2022. That's why he is one of my must-haves. Not only is Michael Gallup starting the year on the pup, but Amari Cooper's gone too. And sometimes we make the mistake as fantasy analysts saying, oh, just because so-and-so is gone, that means this other player is automatically going to get so much more opportunity. Sometimes that's a fallacy. In this instance, it is not. Dalton Schultz has already proved himself in this offense. He's already proven that Dak Prescott has so much confidence in him, not only in third downs, but in goal line situations, red zone situations as well. And Dalton Schultz has every opportunity to get into that conversation of Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, Kittle, Waller. He is right there with those guys as opposed to the rest of the pack at tight end. And I think it would not be shocking to see him have the best year of his career in 2022. That's why Dalton Schultz is a must-have for me this season. Number 5, Lamar Jackson, quarterback, Baltimore Ravens, QB number 4. Now, you still have to make a pretty good investment in Lamar Jackson, but let's not forget, this guy is only a few years removed from being the best fantasy quarterback, maybe even the best fantasy asset on the planet. Back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons before the injuries last year. Lamar Jackson absolutely has a chance to not only get back to that 1,000-yard rushing marker if he stays healthy, but also improve as a passer. This guy is a good thrower of the football. He just needs some better weapons around him, and I think Rashad Bateman could be that guy to help unlock what Lamar Jackson's talent was in the collegiate level, where you saw him throw the football pretty well. Now, Lamar Jackson does have to stay healthy in order to really realize his full potential again, but let's not forget that he is still an incredible fantasy asset. He is a game changer, and in Superflex leagues especially, if he gets back to form, he is a league-winning type player. He is a must-have for me in 2022 because I also think he's heard all the birds chirping about maybe he isn't that good of a quarterback after all. And I'm telling you, this kid is hungry and he's going to put the work in to improve as a passer in 2022. Even small incremental improvements can go a very big way in terms of his fantasy value. Number 4, Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver, Indianapolis Colts, wide receiver 13. Michael Pittman Jr. looks like the man this year potentially in Indianapolis in the passing game, and Matt Ryan looks like the dude to make him a true top 10 wide receiver in fantasy. I think the end of Matt Ryan's career is grossly exaggerated. Nobody could throw the ball effectively last year behind that awful, terrible, dreadful Atlanta Falcons offensive line. And just like Phillip Rivers 2 years ago, who was taken from a terrible offensive line and dropped in front of a very good one in Indianapolis, you saw Phillip Rivers come through and have a pretty good season. Matt Ryan has a lot more left in the tank than Phillip Rivers did at that point a couple years ago. I expect Ryan to get the best out of Pittman Jr., and I think a steady diet of targets with upside is there for him, and that's why Michael Pittman Jr. is one of my must-have guys in 2022. Number 3, Justin Herbert, quarterback, Los Angeles Chargers, QB2 overall in fantasy. Yes, this is a very high stock I've got to pay for in fantasy this season, even in single quarterback formats, and I'm willing to do it. You know why? Because I know exactly when to go after him. Josh Allen is always the first quarterback off the board, which means that's like an alert that you get on your phone that says, oh, this is going to happen pretty soon. You should pay attention to this. All right, I know that usually a round later is where Justin Herbert tends to go, maybe even 2 rounds later, depending upon the discipline of your league mates. But I'm telling you right now, this is the guy that finished as QB2 last year, and I think he's got a really good shot to finish there again in 2022. And when you wait, instead of taking Josh Allen and take Justin Herbert instead, you get to fill another 3rd round running back, 3rd round big time wide receiver still on your fantasy team, and still get a top 3 quarterback in the next round potentially. And that is huge. Justin Herbert last year nearly threw for 40 touchdowns. He threw for 5,000 yards, and in his career, 50% of his games have gone for over 300 yards. 50% in 2 years. That is stunning. Justin Herbert shows you that a pocket passer can be an elite fantasy quarterback still, and he's still mobile enough to avoid contact and still get the ball out. That is very important. Not to mention, there's going to be some big shootouts, I think, potentially in that division. And Justin Herbert's fantasy numbers could go through the roof some weeks. That's why he's one of my must-haves in 2022. Number 2, Davante Adams, wide receiver, Las Vegas Raiders. Wide receiver, number 4. Davante Adams is no longer a Packer, and I love this. Why? Because he's a little cheaper than he used to be. So a guy who would usually go in the top 5-6 picks now is going at the end of the first round, and that is must-have territory for me. Remember a few years ago when DeAndre Hopkins changed teams and everybody started to devalue him and he had a great fantasy season? This is starting to feel eerily familiar in the same vein. Like I just said about Justin Herbert, there's a good chance there's going to be a lot of shootouts in that division. And Davante Adams, I feel very comfortable with Derek Carr because he feels comfortable with Derek Carr. Again, a lot of weapons in this offense, a lot of guys you got to guard. That's good news for Davante Adams. And I'm telling you right now, he is still an elite talent at wide receiver. Don't forget about him. Don't undervalue him going into drafts just because he's not wearing that Green Bay Packer jersey anymore. So give me Davante Adams all day long as one of my must-have players for 2022. Which brings us to number 1 on our list, Ja'Marr Chase, wide receiver, Cincinnati Bengals, wide receiver number 3. Last year, Ja'Marr Chase in his rookie season had 1,455 yards, saw 128 targets, and hauled in 81 of them, 13 of those 81 for touchdowns. And we're just scratching the surface of how good this guy can be. When you got into the playoffs, he really took off. He commanded 27% target share when it mattered the most in postseason play. That's a 5% increase from the regular season. I don't think we've seen how good this Bengals offense can be. People forget that last September, Joe Burrow was slow out of the gate with that knee surgery return. That's not going to be the case this year. This team has confidence. This team is loaded offensively. They did address some of the offensive line issues. And you're looking at potentially the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football in Ja'Marr Chase. And that's why he is my number 1 must-have guy for 2022. Well, those are the names here that I came up with. Those are the players that I must have. I absolutely, positively cannot live without in 2022. I'm curious, who are those names for you? If you have those names that you just have to have on your fantasy team, make sure you drop them here in the YouTube comments because I want to know about them. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. That'll do it for me, Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.